lawyer. I do venture-backed finance, and I also do entertainment. And so that is what brought me into this sort of over-the-top and other platforms of sort of on the internet is when I started, and then I started to do a lot of social media and mobile stuff, and I ended up doing these deals. And what it got me thinking about is really the changes in media and how we have this kind of convergence of changes where you've got a change of the behavior of the people who are watching media and what they follow, where the younger people are following what their friends watch and the older people are following more often brands. So for example, Wall Street Journal and New York Times, brands that they trust, that younger people don't really trust, they trust their friend circle more. And it's creating this big change in the way media is delivered and how we sort of find out about things. And at the same time, you have a change in the platforms. And this is, so that's really, you know, a backhanded way of explaining why a venture finance lawyer would be interested in this area. The reason is because there's a huge amount of opportunity for new companies to start and for new markets to grow. And that's what we're gonna hear about from the panel. So that's enough about me. I'm a partner at Cowen Debates, Abrahams, and Shepherd. And you know, I don't know if you're comfortable doing it. I am. I'm going to say my email address. I'd like it if you would as well. That way, you know, like part of the reason we're here is networking and, you know, getting business going. So I'm at smasur@cdas.com.
One more time.
smasur@cdas.com. So that's Cowen, Debates, Abrahams, and Shepherd. And I'm a partner there. I am a member of the venture group, but I also have an entertainment practice. Represent a few interesting people, Bob Vila, getting going with some bigger name skiers as well, which I'm excited about. And so that's enough about me. Let's hear from you guys.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Mark Wolf. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me and for wanting to listen to me. My background is that I studied creative media at the University of Hawaii and ended up doing a film for the Barack Obama campaign, got involved in them. It helped that my academic advisor was Barack Obama's brother-in-law, so I saw that as a golden opportunity. Got involved in the campaign, did a film that ended up playing at the Democratic National Convention and went on to serve at the White House doing films for the Obama administration. So I'm going to talk about that experience and leveraging the Obama star power, which he very much has. And my email, if you want to know it, is mark, M-A-R-K, at ctw-productions.org. That's ctw-productions.org, and I'd be happy to network and hear from all of you.
This is going to be great because it's kind of far away from entertainment, but it's, I think, super exciting because if you think about the first Obama campaign and the role that, you know, MoveOn.org played,
yep,
and the different social media that affected that campaign, that's going to be really fascinating to hear about.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bill Sanders. Forgive my tardiness. I am the Senior Vice President of Athlete and Talent Marketing at Excel Sports Management. It's an agency that represents athletes, also does sports consulting. We have 4 divisions. In our basketball division, we represent Blake Griffin, Kevin Love, LaMarcus Aldridge, and others. Our baseball division represents Derek Jeter and Clayton Kershaw and others. Our golf division represents Tiger Woods and Justin Rose and others. And then our talent division, which is sort of a catch-all for clients that we don't do their contracts for, but we do their marketing. We represent Peyton Manning, Danica Patrick, Taylor Swift, and Dave Bautista, the actor, and others as well. And my responsibility is to sort of help build all the client personal brands to make them more marketable and make them ultimately more desirable to sponsors and off the field revenue opportunities. And we've been spending a lot of time focusing lately on creating original content where our clients can not only be on-camera performers, but also can be creative forces behind the development of the creative ideas. And then we can utilize their influence and their social media reach to distribute some of that content. So I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Jonathan.
Hey guys, how are you? Jonathan Lowe. Email's pretty easy to remember. jlowe, Lowe, at lakings.com. You can also call me J-Lo. Everyone does, actually. My friends. Didn't start with the email. Started before that, so I'm okay with that. I've been with AEG for 14 years. I started out actually in the company promoting their music products, and then a year and a half into that, transitioned into sports. So my title is SVP Marketing for LA Kings and AEG Sports. I spend most of my time now focusing on the Kings, and with that, our branding, our creative, our marketing items, and day-to-day figure out how do we grow and activate our fan base around the sport of hockey.
Now, is your background been with venues more, or with teams more, or what's it been?
Yeah, so in terms of my time at AEG, AEG is a company that owns multiple sports teams, multiple venues, but primarily it's been focusing on both teams and events. In terms of driving ticket sales, sponsorship revenues, activations, and a lot of the time we spend now, is focusing on storytelling and brand building, at least specifically with the Kings, and we have some exciting stuff to share, and hopefully some good ideas from the panel and the audience. Would love to hear.
Excellent, Justin.
jlowe at lakings.com.
We're all kings. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be at Digital Hollywood, Steve. Always a pleasure to have you here as well and lead us. You're looking particularly tan today. You'll have to explain that for a man who works so hard.
I live in New York.
Then you're really going to have to explain that. I run a TV company called Just Entertainment that's part of the very large company Endemol Shine. For those of you who may know TV but not know that Endemol merged with Shine last year, and it's now the world's largest private TV company operating in 30 plus countries with scripted, unscripted, digital, and consumer products. And I run my own production company within that empire. My email, if you'd like to get a hold of me, is jlowe at lakings.com.
I will field all relevant
he's
requests
all
for
relevant
for
TV.
Justin.
I just had a meeting of the minds with J-Lo over here, and he said he would do that. But if you want a more direct path,
Does he book your travel too?
he does not. But if you're looking for a job, Steve, it's Justin.Hochberg, you can see that, I don't need to spell that part, at Endemol, Endemol, Shine, SHINE, .us, not .com, not .it, .me, .us. And what we do is very simple. We have a very simple model. We create, package, sell, make, and monetize content. That's it. Those are steps to nirvana and corporate bliss. And we do that through taking a piece of IP, whether it be a digital show, a scripted show, a reality show, and try and sell that to an outlet. And that outlet could be a linear TV network or an IP-based network. It could be short form, it could be long form. We try and infuse every aspect of what we do with our creativity and our expertise, whether it's a $10,000 bit or whether it's $1 million show or a $2 million show like the upcoming CBS The Hunted. And then once we do that, we try and figure out how to monetize that the best. And that's probably most relevant to this because it's not just, now that you have viewers, eyeballs, whether it's in a stadium or on a mobile screen or on a TV, it's how do you extract the most value from it. So we obviously get paid license fees, but we work a lot with brands to in shows. But more importantly, we also work with brands after the show. So for example, Shine has done an amazing job of building up IP off the show. So you watch MasterChef, there is a MasterChef pop-up store in many countries. You like The Biggest Loser, there are actually Biggest Loser hotels. So we are constantly looking for ways to integrate IP with brands and build content around it or help use brands to monetize.
There's Biggest Loser hotels?
You are checked in for a week, yes.
That's amazing.
Well, I mean, just think about it. It's in over, I think, 60 plus countries. So it's a global brand. Like these brands are in 60 to 80 countries, whether it's the tape sale from the US or original versions in the local language. And it's a lot of people want to lose weight, right? I mean, it's a giant self-help category. So if you could capitalize that and gear a hotel experience, a resort experience, to helping you lose weight, using the plan that you saw on TV, using the menus you see on TV. It's very powerful. That's the IP that's spread. So yes.
Well, this is exciting. I thought we were going to talk about Second Screen, but we're going to talk about politics and hotels and all kinds of stuff. This is great. We had when I was in high school, we had a booster club for my football team, and when you were talking about what you do after the show, our motto was, if we don't win the game, we'll win after the game. And Utah is a very violent place.
Let's see what we can monetize about that.
Exactly. You can sell tickets to the fight.
Yes.
I would love to hear more, Mark, about what happened. Like, what happened in Hawaii? Where did it all begin?
Sure. So I was a nobody student at the time when it all happened, which is another testament to the power of this online media that YouTube represents, and the democratization of filmmaking, I think, in that we could do a short little film as students, and based on the quality that we could create on the equipment that we had and the small team that we were able to do this with, take it all the way to the Democratic National Convention, and the campaign found it good enough to put on the official Barack Obama YouTube page. So it started out as just a very small grassroots film. I basically begged his brother-in-law to be able to do this and put it together. It was very quickly done, very fast, but good enough that that it was able to take my career to the next level, which I'm really grateful for. And then from there, went on to serve at the White House, applied there. Did films in the new media department, which was another great opportunity because this was the first administration with the new media department. It was at the cusp of social media, and there was about maybe 18 people in total in the new media department, a lot of young people, very, very smart people. 5 of us focused on doing videos, purely on doing videos. I was one of those, and we would all wear multiple hats. And
Videos of what length? Like,
very short, maybe
right.
1 to
social
3,
media
4 minutes.
shareable
Social media
videos.
short, yeah.
What year was this?
This was the first and second year of the Obama administration, yeah. And then it was cool to be a part of that team in that, we would create the content, and then they would put it on, they would repurpose it multiple times, whether it was a blog or Facebook and Twitter, and get it out to many, many eyeballs.
How?
So there were individuals that were responsible for example, the blog post. So that we would create a video, and then this person would take it and write a little article to go with it, and then post it on whitehouse.gov, and then they'd put it out on Barack Obama's Facebook and Twitter. I think it's another testament to digital media, the power of it, that, for example, some videos, we would create very, very short videos that would then CNN would take them and put them online, or MSNBC would take them and put them online. So we'd repurpose something multiple times and therefore get way more eyeballs than traditional ways.
What kinds of eyeballs did you think you got? Were you looking at the metrics to see who this might be influencing? And
One person on the team was in charge of that. We actually had one person on our crew that was just doing analytics, so that was a big part of it. And I remember every month he would send this big Excel sheet full of data and information, and it was interesting to
hopefully that came with a personal description of what the information meant, right?
right. And it was, I remember looking at this chart of where we were in terms of eyeballs and where Fox News was in terms of eyeballs that we were aspiring to get to compete with them. And we never quite got there, but we got many, many eyeballs. I mean, I think it's a testament to the campaign, for example. Like, what was it? I think something like 70 million friends and followers and subscribers for Obama versus 10 million for McCain, and that translates into votes, and that translates into eyeballs and his star power, so to speak, which we leverage to
it's
get
huge.
the communication out. Yeah.
Also, something like a takeaway from that is you're trying to compete with Fox News. That's an established brand.
Right.
You guys were a startup.
Yeah,
Like, that's the
we
way
were
I
a
see
startup.
it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think there's any reason not to set your sights that high. Like, if you have the opportunity and the situation presents itself, why not go for the
gold?
The biggest name you can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that was a great experience.
So moving to sports. So you're trying to do something similar with sports, like get people excited about not only the LA Kings but hockey. In the way that, for example, Tiger Woods made golf more exciting to people than it was before, and Bodie Miller made skiing more exciting to people than it was before. So how do you use social media to get people excited about hockey and about the LA Kings?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's sort of two distinctions. One is, your athletes and your players and their personalities, and the other is your organization as the LA Kings. I think traditionally, it's been very challenging for sports teams in the social media space, to be particularly compelling because the team itself doesn't have a personality. It's the players, and back in the day, teams were posting, very sort of just basic stuff, stats and all the stuff that you can get elsewhere. So, what's compelling about social? It's the personalities behind those people. So one of the things, and that the Kings have done on the social side, we've got an unbelievable team. Is one of the first teams, if not the first team, to really create an identity around their social media, and particularly at the time, our Twitter handle, where we were okay poking fun at other teams, poking fun at ourselves, having that sort of the snarky. At the time, we were underdogs. Obviously we've won 2 Stanley Cups in the last few years, but at the time we really developed that voice. We hadn't won any cups, and we'd been in the marketplace for a long time. So we decided to take a stand and to take a voice and try to develop something that people wanted to follow. I mean, a couple examples, and again, obviously winning is great, and that's a huge key in any marketing success. In LA, obviously winning is a very important factor, but how do you manufacture success? How are you compelling when you're not winning? So things that we have done that a lot of teams wouldn't do is, a couple of years ago we got knocked out in the Western Conference Finals, and we tweeted at another team that just got knocked out and said, hey, you guys want to grab a drink? Which most sports teams on their Twitter handle wouldn't sort of poke fun at themselves for losing in the playoffs. I mean, teams are all about winning on the player side, but on the organization side, sort of how do you have fun with that? Even now,
Did they do it? Did they go
pardon?
get a drink together?
No. We have these fun sort of Twitter rivalries with other teams that are, digitally focused. They have nothing necessarily to do with what's happening on the ice. So I think, number one, the challenge is how do you create an identity around your organization that makes you compelling on social? And at times, you leave yourself open for risk, but there's reward. We were the only sports team in Sports Illustrated to actually be listed in the Twitter Top 100. Everything else was individual athletes, and that's because we sort of dared to have a voice and have fun and make fun of ourselves at times as well.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So can I just, okay, so you guys did that, and as a challenger brand, it makes sense you would do that, right? Because people in the leadership position never want to take that risk. Sort of like Billy Beane in the Oakland days, right? So now that you've done that, is that filtering into other people? Is that changing the way teams approach team marketing?
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm not the guy doing it. The gentleman by the name of Pat Donahue gets all the credit, so I can brag on his behalf, certainly not on myself, but it did change the game. In a way, a lot of sports teams were able,
Change the social media game.
Change the social media game or landscape, and that teams were willing to have a voice and willing to take a risk in doing that. And even now, after winning, and again, we have a lot of fun beyond just wins and losses, but even now, after 2 Stanley Cups and getting knocked out, the icon on our Twitter handle was, Kopitar, our star player, in a golf outfit. Again, we're still able to poke fun at ourselves, but also to engage other teams. The other part of it is engaging the fans. So, you talk about that, and it's breaking down that wall that before social and before digital, I think, existed between, team and fan, or celebrity and fan. And all these folks want is access. All they want is to feel part of the organization, to be able to connect with whether it's the team or a player. And if you can engage in those conversations in a meaningful way, and obviously with the volume that a lot of us have, it's difficult to respond to everything, but we respond, we engage, we comment, we reply, and I think that dialogue is what fans want so much. It's not just a broadcast mentality in terms of us giving information. It's that back and forth, and a lot of the time the stuff our fans are saying is way cooler than anything we could ever think of on a marketing side.
Right. So with that, I'd like to hear more about who the audience is, because we should be trying to address challenges that you have. So how many people are content producers in the audience by raise of hands? Okay. How many people are producers of entertainment content? How many people are producers of something else? Like for example, we have a political person and a sports person. Okay. So that brings me to Bill. How do you use these new tools to promote entertainment content? Like what do you do? How do you get started, especially if it's a new brand?
Well, I would add that sports, the sports industry is so enormous, and there's now so much attention paid to it, and there's university programs being developed to study it, and people that want to get into the field. In a way, sports is lucky. It's got two things going for it. And the obvious one is that in this environment where people are skipping commercials and they're watching programming when they want. I was talking about a show at lunch earlier today. I was talking about The League, this TV show about fantasy football. I think it's hilarious. My son and I watch it together. And my buddy asked me what channel it's on. I have no idea. I don't know. I watch it when I want to watch it, and sometimes where I want to watch it. Sports,
how do you do that?
What's that?
How do you know?
Oh, my son turns on the Xbox and he finds it. I don't know where it is, but there's no loyalty to distribution channels, right? I've always felt that way. Is that we don't really care what movie theater we go to or what radio station we listen to. It's the content that we're loyal to. But so sports is lucky that you have to watch it live and you can't skip commercials, and so all this money is going away from traditional, and obviously so that sports has that going to it. But more importantly, the reason I love sports is that it's where our ultimate loyalty lies in terms of being a consumer. We're more loyal to our families and friends than anything, but I'm much more loyal to the Pittsburgh Steelers, my favorite team, than I am to a car brand or a watch brand or a soda brand or any other brand. So that lifelong loyalty that the Kings are so smart to tap into is what attracts brands and attracts business and blows up broadcast rights and all those things. So for me, I'm old enough to remember that when I wanted to connect with Terry Bradshaw as a kid, I sent $5 into his fan club and got a fake autograph 8x10 in the mail. And I felt like, wow, I got a letter from Terry, And now it is social media. I mean, you connect and follow directly to your favorite athletes, your favorite musicians, and we're lucky that we work in the NBA world. The NBA has really embraced it. Like if you look at their social numbers compared to the NFL, you'd be surprised, because the NBA really got on board early in terms of not only social media but also recognizing that people were loyal to teams, but they were also becoming more and more loyal to players. When I was a kid, it was really team first, and if Bradshaw got traded, to the Browns, then I suddenly would hate him. But now, because of fantasy football and these other things, we have these sort of dual loyalties to players and teams. And you would never have seen in the past a team promoting their best player in the way that you guys are promoting on your Facebook. But now, more and more teams, baseball has been talking about it a lot as well, that they're going to start to promote the athletes because that's where that emotional connection is ultimately made.
All right, so now we have to go to work. How do you connect this excitement about the teams or your piece of entertainment content with the brands? How do you create an excitement around that? You've pitched a brand, the brand's excited, now what?
Well, in terms of social media, my feeling is strongly that we live in the age of authenticity, that we've got 100 athletes that we represent, and it would be fairly easy for someone to look at their social media streams and see which athletes are really engaged in it, which ones aren't. So we have full-time dedicated young people that are creating content, publishing content on social media channels, but without the engagement of the athletes, it's just not effective. Yet, can they tell if it's fake or real? I think they can. And in some cases, they'll be tolerant. So, I'll give some examples. Like Clayton Kershaw's a client.
What if you're just not good at that?
Well, Clayton Kershaw's not. He's a private guy. He's what I call a reluctant icon. He doesn't really want to be famous, right? He wants to be really good and he wants to be really charitable. So he allows us to handle his social media feeds. He does some stuff on his own, but a lot of the stuff is content that we're getting from him that is authentic. So it's still behind the scenes. It's him playing with his kids. It's stuff that matters. But one of our other clients is Danica Patrick, and completely on her own. We look smart for this, but we didn't do this. She is now feeding social media content that is almost primarily cooking and yoga. These are her two passions. And we've talked to Endemol
She's still
Shine a little
racing?
bit about like
She's
the
still
food
racing,
space.
right?
She's still racing, but if
Okay.
you want to know about her as a person, you can see she loves cooking and she loves yoga. And at some point, she will probably have her own cooking show. She'll probably have her own yoga studios or yoga line, or she'll do something with a yoga company. Like, these are her passions beyond racing. And so when she's done, she'll easily transition into those areas because she's been authentically doing that storytelling through her social media channels.
So how did you associate and then disassociate her, or did you disassociate her with GoDaddy?
You know, that's a tricky one, quite honestly. It's a
That's why
tricky
we want to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, look, it was a great partnership. There's no question, and yet, you know, as you see her transition moving forward, I think you're going to see her embrace more female-friendly brands.
Okay.
Those kinds of things. I mean, that's the trade-off. GoDaddy made her more famous than she was, for sure, but on the other hand, it made her, I think, a little bit, you know, a little bit more difficult for female-focused brands to get affiliated with. So GoDaddy's gone, and it gets replaced by Nature's Bakery, which is as far removed from GoDaddy as you can possibly get.
But it's what she's into.
Yeah.
So it's based on authenticity.
Yeah, and I think that's what's, I mean, that's what sponsors are demanding. You know, there's been so much fallout, and some of it comes from one of our clients, like the Tiger Woods thing, the Lance Armstrong thing. These things hurt brands that were affiliated with these athletes. So now what we're seeing in every deal is like high demand for, does he or she really love this product? We need to know, has he or she tested it? Are they liking it? Are they embracing it? And it's even better if they were already talking about the product before you even call the brand to see if there's a partnership there.
Okay, so back to the metrics. So Mark, who do you think you influenced here? Like what age groups and
Yeah.
like, what kind of people actually voted off of this excitement that you created?
Well, in terms of age group, the obvious one that comes to mind is definitely the younger generation. I think you alluded to a great point about access to the White House, which was certainly a problem. I mean, it's the most heavily guarded place in the country, right, with no access. There's iron gates surrounding it.
Yeah.
And I think it gave a lot of people, especially the younger generation, which engages with social media, access into the White House. We would do a series, for example, called Into the White House, and do a little film on, for example, a cabinet meeting, which no one had really seen before, and we would do a little behind the scenes of what that was like to increase transparency, which I think that's a good job of identifying a problem, a sense of disconnect from government, and a lack of civic engagement. And then finding a market and a solution through digital media, increasing some sense of transparency, these sorts of things. So it engaged a lot of people. I will say that a lot of the people that watched were Democrats, hardcore Democrats that were fans of Obama, naturally. And we had a lot of repeat viewers, but we got a lot of unique views as well. A lot of young people engaged in government. I was growing up under the Bush administration, I was very anti-government before that, and then had a sense of change. I think a lot of young people felt that, of my generation as well. So it did a really good job of identifying the problem, creating a market for it, creating a solution for it, using digital media and the power that exists within that to open up a whole new audience.
It's a lot like sports, because you're not just trying to convert new fans, but you're trying to keep existing fans enthusiastic.
True.
And so what would you do if Hillary Clinton called you and said, I need help because young people aren't getting me? What's she doing wrong?
Well, that's a larger conversation.
But you're the perfect man to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, if I were her, I would do a lot more video in terms of live streaming. Like I think an ideal candidate would have full transparency and be able to live stream everything, put your emails out there, whatever, and just show the people who you really are on a genuine level. I think it'd be great. I don't see that either. I think it'd be great if a candidate were willing to do such a thing. It'd be full transparency, right? I
But
think that would be
isn't
great.
Donald Trump doing that? I mean, he may not be live streaming.
Yeah, that's a great
but, like,
point.
His
Who-
shtick,
who's genuine?
Who did you say?
Donald Trump.
Right.
His
Yeah.
shtick is here it is. I say what I want. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll give it out there. And whether he's using the social media or not, his version is exactly what made him famous. And full disclosure, I actually helped develop this original series, The Apprentice, and worked with him. So I had. But he's.
So
no
you're going to
different
help with the first reality show at the White House if he wins?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that segue. I just want to announce on behalf of Donald Trump that this is all just a brand-driven experience, and that we're just trying to figure out how to make money off of brands that we're actually running for president. So thank you very much. Yes, but that is exactly what people like about it. I think that he's
that's a
willing
great
to
point.
post senators' cell phone numbers or say things that people are maybe thinking, even if you don't want to admit it.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah.
Right, so I wanted to explain, that was actually my question, is the same as yours, is it's a little different how I would phrase it though, is we think in the entertainment business, our basis of thinking about things is still in old media to some degree, or to maybe a large degree. So we kind of knew how to read the metrics and think about whether baking soda people were reacting to the same commercial over and over again. And after a while, you'd have to change the commercial and do something different, or else people would stop reacting to it. And so my question is, how would you relate that in social media? Like, how does it work in social media? Somebody, everybody, when you're on Twitter, they suggest who you should be following, and you click on it, and you never look at what those people say necessarily. And so how do you make something new and fresh and actually make those followers worthwhile in social media? And how do you then measure whether they were worthwhile or not using the metrics?
I think
It's a hard question.
I think at one of these Digital Hollywood, not last one, before, there was someone from Dwayne Johnson's production company on one of the panels. I think we had.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought she was going to be here now, actually.
Yes, and so I bring this up because I remember the conversation where they had talked about focusing on, developing the social presence, and at that time, I think they quoted something like 30 million Instagrammers, which I read just the other day is up to like 50 million or whatever. It's jumped considerably. Yeah. But what was interesting is he was building a dialogue, like many YouTube personalities, a community of people that were engaged in him without selling anything.
Right, and also he's such a great example because he reinvented himself a couple of times.
Yeah, he's very relatable. I think he was someone that I think was not like a typical actor because he was a wrestler, and you felt like he was
who
like
we're talking about, right?
The Rock. Rock, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So the reason it's on my mind is because I just saw the other day The Rock launched like his first pay-for product. It's called the Rock Clock, and it's an app you download, and it is basically it's a clock, and it's got like 20 different wake-up sentiments that he personally recorded, from screaming at you to get out of bed to coaxing you, whatever it is. But it's also got a mode where you can track The Rock as he gets up. So like if you want to be on Rock time, you can get up when Rock gets up, and it's like he gets up at 3, so it'll wake you up at 3, and you could follow him. But the point is, last year when we talked about it, they had nothing that they were selling. They were just building a community of people that were interested in his personality and engaging with him. And now they've announced, in partnership with IMG and William Morris Endeavor, which it owns, that they're rolling out a whole series of products and stuff, the Rock Clock being first of them, but it goes to brands, et cetera. So my perception of it is that social media is an extremely good way to aggregate an audience, and it typically is not to sell people, but to aggregate them, and then at the right time, find a way to monetize it. And what that right time is not always so clear, and whether it's today or 5 years from now, but that's clearly what someone like Dwayne has done, and it seems like what a lot of the smart brands are doing, which is to say, building the community and then finding subtle ways at the right time to monetize.
If you go back even 5 years, say 2 years ago,
so
I was
get the
working.
people and then monetize.
I was working at PMK for a couple of years, which is a PR firm, and I'd say 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, there was a whole class of the leading generation in Hollywood that totally resisted social media. They were actors, and Cameron Diaz didn't. I don't know if she did or not, but people like that, of her star caliber, were really resisting social media because they wanted to maintain their privacy. But the music world totally embraced it. And so, like, we brag in sports about some of the numbers, but like, check out Lady Gaga. Dwayne Johnson, who at the time wasn't an actor, he was a wrestler. And I've got a client named Dave Bautista who's got 7 million followers on social media, and most people don't know who he is.
That's an obvious reason. I will say that is so obvious because actors, by definition, work in private. We see them in public. But the way I know that, beyond the obvious, is that whenever you see an actor get up to an award show like the Academy Awards, they stumble at what to speak into, right? It's this awkward dance with the microphone. Hello, is this work? But musicians, professional wrestlers, athletes, daytime talk show hosts live in the public domain. So it's very obvious why that would seem like a good thing because, you walk by an athlete, they high-five you. You walk by an actor, they run from you, right?
Yeah.
So
And
that's a logical transition.
Yeah, and Lady Gaga, and also those are the people who are attracted to it. Lady Gaga's young, right? So I watched
Sure.
that happen in New York, and it was pretty fast.
But Ashton
Very
Kutcher was the one who
fast.
broke
Like,
Twitter, right?
what-
I mean,
for
he
one-
was.
One minute she's in a club with like 5 people, and then the next minute she's huge.
Yeah, but I mean, Ashton Kutcher was someone young, right? So it was young people. I mean, who's the early adopter? Challenger brands, the Kings. Ashton Kutcher as a young guy, right? It's the same thing with, listen, traditional people in media in particular are always the last to adopt anything. I mean, Disney took forever to adapt CGI animation. Nobody wanted to adapt the VHS or the DVD or like online MySpace or, traditional media is always the last to get involved in this. The nice thing is, today individuals, like your clients, can do it on their own without any permission from the Kings or the league or the studio.
It's one thing to add, and you said it right, is community. And I think recognizing the fact that fans or consumers, joined not for the purpose of being sold products or services. They joined because they wanted to connect to the brands, the teams, the musicians they love, and they wanted to get information and share information. So I think if you take that sort of community-first approach in building and thinking about how am I providing these people value? They're spending their time, their mind share, obviously in a very, polluted world with all sorts of information being thrown at you to engage in your brand or your team. What valuable content or stories or offers are you giving these people, and how are you allowing them to engage with each other? You take that track first, then you worry about monetization, and you monetize it in a way that's still respectful for that community, because if not, people will disengage with you, and then you won't have a valuable asset. So I think if you keep sort of that community mind first, you'll grow it, and then you can figure out creative ways to monetize it. But again, I think recognize the purpose, why people have joined these, and always, we're all consumers too, even though we're marketers and producers. So what are the things that turns us off? Think of yourself when you're figuring out how to promote a product or service to that group that you've spent a lot of time and energy building.
No, that's kind of what I'm fascinated in hearing more about, because I think everyone here is struggling with how do I get my piece of content out? How do I get my product going? And part of what we're supposed to talk about is celebrity. So celebrity still supercharges that, right? I mean, there's a way to make
The
celebrity-
right one, right? I mean, some people are really good. I mean, example, Kim Kardashian can do no wrong, right? I mean, so that's some, but not every celebrity is someone you want to engage with, right? You may want an autograph from, but if most fans, if Cameron Diaz starts
Charles
social,
Manson.
pardon me,
Charles Manson.
I'm sure there's a community that'd be interested. I don't know if there's a brand that'd be interested, right? But I mean, there are certain people that are just engaging and you want to be around. I mean, athletes are one of them. I mean, you want to hear what Tom Brady ate for breakfast, right? Yeah. That's exciting for some reason. So it's not every celebrity. It's like and sometimes it's not the most famous celebrities, right? I mean, that's the disconnect. It's not always the A-list. Yes, it's Lady Gaga. Yes, it's Kim Kardashian. But Kim Kardashian was certainly not the most famous celebrity when social media made her the most talked about person, right?
So I think that's a really good segue to talk about who is the audience that you're trying to reach. And I feel like with the new platforms, we've got this opportunity, the obviousness. I was talking about this with someone. Obviousness of the network era was that there were 3 networks, and it was everybody. You were always marketing brands that only worked when marketed to everybody. But now we have all of these new things happening. We have local food. a big thing that's starting to become important. And along with it, in our media, we have the ability to so a local food brand can market in a local place, and you can market based on affinity, or you can market based on a smaller name celebrity who has a stronger level of affinity with a smaller group of people and connect brands with them. And I think you should really think creatively about what you're working on and whether that creates opportunities for you. You know, instead of thinking, how do I make this, you know, the next James Cameron movie, think about whether what you're working on might have a specific audience that likes it.
Well, I hate to say this because I think there's this hyper obsession with millennials, but actually it is a millennial issue that I think they're discoverers. They like to have brands that are unique to them, and they might share it with a few of their friends, but I don't think it's cool to be the fan of the big brand anymore. I think whether it's in foods or in restaurants, or I mean anywhere you go now, there's you know, these little sort of micro communities of interesting ideas. You go up to Portland and there's even small chains that I've never heard of, pizza chains, and you know, just they're developed locally. People get really excited about them, and they're totally rejecting the big brand. So I think in terms of like entrepreneurship and development of new companies and new, like we're targeting for sales now. It's why we focus on branded content. We're targeting much smaller companies in terms of finding a way to align them with our clients. So just the other day, there was an announcement that Beyonce invested in this watermelon water company. A few years ago, she was with Pepsi. Like now she's going with the micro brand because her fans probably think that's way cooler than Pepsi.
Or she'll get more equity.
Well, yeah, for sure, yeah. But that's really smart. Oprah Winfrey and Weight Watchers is a different kind of example.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Jessica Alba and The Honest Company. Like, it's really an interesting time.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can make a ton more. I mean, Curtis 50 Cent and Vitamin Water is the case study. I think once they saw him, if people don't know this, 50 Cent was offered to be the spokesperson. He took equity. That get bought, I think, by Coca-Cola. I think he cashed out about $150 million. Once the whole community saw that, they said, well, I don't want $2 million to be I want an ownership position. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of why they're doing that.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for big brands? And for all of us, it seems like a lot of work. You know, instead of just marketing, just doing one deal for Pepsi and Beyonce, now we have to do 1,000 small deals. Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
No, after you.
Not necessarily. I mean, you know, I think with sports teams, you know, runs the gamut from, you know, major brands, you know, large national brands, to smaller local brands that want to engage that, you know, sort of activated, engaged, you know, local fan base of the team. I think the more important thing is, what are the ideas that are bringing that partnership to life? You know, the days of just slapping your name on a dasher board, you know, and just having sort of that passive signage is over in sports. Now, you know, sponsors want, you know, sponsored content and engagement and, you know, creative activations and ways to activate social and digital and players and drive to retail. And so, you know, whether it's a large brand or a small brand, I think the real challenge is, and you know, for folks like me, the exciting challenge is, how do you get creative? Anyone can put up a sign, and you know, those signs are still great, you know, and command value. But how can you really bring that brand to life, associating itself with the team? Because that's why it's doing that, to engage with the fan base, you know, and have that brand connect in an interesting and memorable way. And the digital space overall has provided great opportunities, you know, some challenges, but that's where I think the fun comes in, to figure out how. And the other thing I think you said is about authenticity. You know, as a marketer, and you know, probably with your shows as well, you can't make someone into something they're not. You can't take an athlete that is, you know, a shy, more reserved guy and turn him into that loud, you know, bragging guy. You have to amplify what's true about your players or your team, and that's how you're going to have success. How do you amplify who these people or who your brand really is, as opposed to trying to make them into something they're not? Because, especially in this day and age with social, people are going to see through that, and they're going to call you out on it, and everyone's going to see it.
Can I just talk about something you were mentioning, which is how to get your stuff discovered? That is probably a very difficult thing to answer, but I have noticed, my wife is a social media writer and blogger. She does her own thing and does videos, and so I hear her talk a lot about, and she's a mother, So she does mother-related topics through pop culture, but she started from nothing, and she's with a bunch of people who started with actually no resources whatsoever, no brand behind them, no media platform, no nothing. And the stories I hear as an analogy about how does an average person get their media discovered is most of the people who have become really famous in that world, right, just like anybody in any of these worlds, these people started with nothing, and some of them have become giant industries. Not unlike Michelle Phan, right, as a YouTube personality, beauty and lifestyle, but these are mothers of 2, 3, 4 kids anywhere in the USA, and they've got 1 million followers. And they do everything from parody videos in their closet where they just rewrite songs to just whatever, and they go and they get discovered. So the good news is that today, more than ever, everybody has every tool they need to create and distribute content, which never existed before, right? We all have an iPhone, and we can pretty much all use a form of iMovie. That, of course, is compounded by the fact that everybody has it, so there's more to discover. But I would bet on the whole that the fact that it's easier to create and get it out there way outweighs the fact that there's a lot out there. So if your content maybe isn't being discovered the way you want, there are a lot of levers for you to pull in terms of improving the type of content, search optimization. In fact, at most conferences about that, they talk less about making better content and more optimizing it for search results, which is against everything I do for a living, which is make content. But the search optimization alone would probably make whatever you're putting out there work better.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that in terms of sports. Like you see surfers and snowboarders sort of going for certain tricks and doing things. It's kind of boring, frankly. They do it over and over again just to hit the points so that they can get the points. And to me, this is like the media example of that. You see movies where it looks like they've simply created, there's no story now, they've simply created an opportunity for little micro things that you could pull out of the movie and then retweet.
Yeah. Well, I think, and in a movie that's a little more difficult, but like Jimmy Fallon's show, which I think is very successful, very creative, and I think he's got a lot of energy, really, it seems like someone thought about putting that show together just as largely of how do you break it down to 3-minute segments that can go on the internet.
Right.
And I think that actually works very well. Same with James Corden. I think late night talk shows are a perfect example of 3-minute segments, carpool karaoke being a great example. But that works.
So that works now with the platforms we have now. So that brings me to my next sort of big topic is the platforms. I mean, this has been really exciting for me already because we've talked all about, we haven't talked about technology at all, really. We've talked about how hard it is to do this. I mean, the degree to which our panel is struggling with this gives you an idea working with the big brands. If you're working with smaller content, it's just as hard. Now, how do you manage the different platforms? I mean, and what are the platforms? The platforms are, you've still got the big screen, you've got connected TV, you've got mobile phones, which at this point are smartphones, you've got iPads, and then maybe soon you have VR. So how do you kind of design for that as you think about the content that you're creating? Like you mentioned, Jimmy Fallon is thinking about pulling these short things out. Is he thinking, or are they thinking about that being on mobile phones primarily? Or are they thinking about it being on computers and mobile phones? Like what's the thought process there?
Well, I'm only guessing about Fallon, but I mean, I think the general thought process is you pretty much need to be everywhere, right? I mean, if you are a brand, you cannot choose. You have to be platform agnostic or platform, sort of omni-platform, right? That you can't say, oh, I don't believe in Snapchat, but I think Twitter's amazing. So if you're a big brand like these guys, I mean, I think you have to be everywhere, right? If you're Fox marketing a show like MasterChef, or I created a show called The Prophet on CNBC, they market that everywhere. Not everybody has all those resources or enough to do that, but I think, if you're a big brand, you don't have the choice because you don't know where your viewers are going to be and and they use them differently during different times of day, at home, on a commute, etc.
That's a good point. At least on the sports side, is obviously during the season, you've got lots to talk about all the time. Games and stats and trades and injuries. I mean, the storylines in a lot of ways are written for us during the season on that side.
nice.
What a lot of teams have done, including the Kings, has invested in in-house production teams to create content that's got, I would say nothing to do. I mean, it's related to what's happening on the ice, but it's all the storylines that are happening around the game, players and fans. Again, there are a lot of things happening that are nothing to do with games. So we've invested, in particular, also the off season in developing our own internal content production teams to be able to deliver stories and content, when there aren't games happening, and that's how you can engage your fan base, year round. So, probably a lot of stuff we already talked about, beforehand. So you apologize, you got to hear it twice, but again, every team goes to a hospital and does their hospital visit. And we wanted to tell that story about our players engaged in the community. So every team does that, and it would be a very, it'd be a very boring video just to show your players, shaking hands and, going to the hospital and doing that. What we wanted to do is tell the story behind that. Again, this is just one example of, what you can do if you can control and produce your own content. Is we found that one of our players made a connection with a young boy at Children's Hospital of LA struggling and battling cancer. And we found out about that connection, and at the beginning of this season, we have our Hockey Fights Cancer Night. So what do? We brought that boy back to the game and created an unbelievable experience for him and family at the game, where, limousine to the game and met the mascot and dropped the puck on the ice. And then what happened? He was reunited with that player, Alec Martinez, that he connected with at the hospital after the game. And we facilitated that, and obviously with the parents' and family's permission, created a piece of content out of that. And it was about us trying, in a sort of a non-backslapping way, to talk about the powerful connections our players are having in the community, through content and through storytelling. And if you invest in those resources, there are a million of those things happening every time. Again, I don't want to capitalize too much time on this, but we had a fan that had a heart attack at a game and was saved by an EMT fan that happened to be sitting next to him. And what happened? Well, his jersey had to be cut to save his life. Well, we found out about this, and we wanted to create a story, obviously with the fans' permission and participation, of how, he was saved at a Kings game. And the one thing he was most heartbroken about was that his Drew Doughty jersey was cut. They had to cut the guy's jersey to save him. He was having a heart attack. Well, what do? We brought the man back for a game, and in the locker room he got to meet Drew, and Drew gave him another signed jersey. And that was part of a marketing campaign. Those are the stories we want to tell, and that's what's really cool. If you invest in it, to be able to tell stories when you're not just happen to be playing on the ice.
Are you thinking about the stories in venue and outside of venue, like how people use their phones in venue and outside of venue?
Yeah, I mean, when we're developing content, obviously we want to make sure that it's optimized for the way we're distributing it. We spend a lot of time thinking about the length of content. If it's for the internet or for digital, what's that sweet spot? Is it short form? Is it long form? And some of that stuff we're learning as we go. And obviously the data tells you and the metrics tell you what sort of is right for you. But yeah, we're constantly thinking about that.
Here's an interesting problem for brands and social media. You have a product that is incredibly successful. Now, it's also incredibly unsuccessful half the year because it goes away. If I told you Coke only was available 6 months a year, you'd say, why? That's idiotic, right? So every sports team has that same problem. There is really very, very little legitimate content related to any sport besides after the season, except for maybe the draft, right? Other than that, it's what you can create. Now, if you're an actor or personality, there's very little content you can create between movies. I mean, how many movies does the biggest movie star in the world do a year? 2? Other than that, there's not much to talk about. Voila, social media. Now you can be Danica Patrick between races and post yoga poses, and you have legitimate content that fans are interested in. So social media is the solution to large brands who have no real content in the off season, quote unquote.
That's so true. I have a client who is, she has a really successful music career. Her name is Elizabeth Chan, and she sings Christmas music. So she has that exact same problem. And what we ended up doing actually is going to Asia, and she's huge in Asia.
Because
All
they have
the time.
Christmas all the time.
All the time.
Asia has Christmas all the time. I don't. What's the connection there? They don't. They work on a different calendar. I didn't know
They
that.
like our music. It's
Like,
that simple.
They don't even have Christmas there for the most part.
They like the shaking bell. They like
Gotcha.
everything.
Okay. They don't think it's Christmas music. That's the point. I got it.
That was a total conversation stopper right there. I wanted to ask, are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Are you asking, are there like independent agencies that will help create social media content for artists? Oh,
So the question is, will brands help support an artist?
I've heard that Red Bull does some of that. You still have to match their demographic, but they've invested in up and coming, musicians. They've got a recording studio at their Santa Monica headquarters. They may have them elsewhere in the world. So they've created a program of discovery.
They have a record label?
Yeah.
Big brands probably won't invest in small, unknown artists, right? Big brands are going to make a deal with Beyonce, as an example. But I think what we said earlier was there are smaller brands, like they were talking about, Bill was talking about some of the brands that are less well-known, so that are looking to be discovery and cool. So, but I think if you go to Taco Bell with somebody, running the Taco Bell account or Coke account or IBM account is probably someone who's been doing this for 30 plus years. So they are probably big into, take a younger brand, a newer brand, a Red Bull or a GoPro or whatever that is, whatever the next version is, a new water. They're probably someone who's like, oh, we want to be discovered, and we want to be discovered with what people are, music at Coachella, not what playing at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
So for an unknown brand, I think you want to find someone who's sort of, you're dating in your category, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great example. I have a really great example for you. I'm into surfing, and I go to Montauk, New York, and surf. So one of the local people in Montauk who's a great surfer is this guy, Michael Poley. And he's up and coming, and he's on the circuit, but he's little, and little is his brand isn't that huge yet. A local lemonade brand, organic lemonade brand called Sweet Talk, they signed him, and they're not really of the size that signs a professional sports person at all. But they were dating in their category. They got together, local Montauk brand, Sweet Talk Lemonade. They sponsor Michael Poley. They give him a surfboard, and he surfed all over the world on that board. He's on the cover of a couple surf magazines, doing a big cutback with the bottom of the board with the Montauk Lemonade logo on the thing. And that's how you do it. Like stay in your genre. What we're hoping is that both of these brands become huge.
That's really smart, actually. It's one of the challenges with team sport athletes is brands have nowhere to stick their logos, except for on their feet. So Nike wraps that up.
Well, now at the NBA they do, right?
What's that?
Are they selling off jerseys on the NBA?
But the athletes, there's going to be challenges there, right? Because the athletes have no control over that. And if Kevin Love has a deal, he has a deal with Kia, and they're the NBA sponsor. But say he had one, with Honda, and Kia is the NBA sponsor. Now Kevin Love is going to be wearing a competitive sponsor to his. That's the big issue that I'm sure is going to be dealt with in the collective bargaining agreement. But it's going to be a challenge. I think, as far as the discovery goes, I've always been a little bit envious of people that work with musicians, because for athletes, we'll use Blake Griffin as an example. His most important content he does not own. It's him on, wearing a Clippers uniform. The NBA owns the content. The Clippers own it locally, and he can't go recreate that. But a musician, regardless of their record deal, they can still record a rehearsal. They can upload a songwriting session, and their fans eat that stuff up alive. Like, there's an endless supply of content that a musician can provide that athletes and actors can't.
Yeah.
So if you're a musician, I would just say continue to build your audience. There's a great book, by the way, called Tribes by Seth Godin, and this is exactly what we're talking about. It's like you don't have to worry about reaching the masses. Start with the sort of inner of the concentric circles and find a small group of people that are going to really love what you're doing and let them advocate.
Right. There's yeah, go ahead.
It said he basically almost bullied himself into the Republican nomination with $2 billion of free media. Is he going to be classified as the first social media presidential candidate? So every candidate after that is
So the question is can you explain the Donald Trump phenomenon? And for my next trick, I will explain the meaning of life. But the Donald Trump phenomenon based on his success in social media.
You're the political.
I cannot explain the Donald Trump phenomenon. No, I mean, you were talking about it, right?
Yeah.
He is an at heart.
It's
He
genius.
Is a brilliant entertainment. I don't think he's brilliant at all in other ways, but he's a brilliant entertainer, right? And he leverages social media. He's completely himself and honest. You know, he gives every emoticon possible when he's speaking. You know, he's just an entertainer, and people eat that up.
And he's saying what some people want to hear. He's saying what people aren't saying.
Yeah, Obama
And
had
what they
star
want to
power
hear,
too, right?
What
he
they might be
has-
saying at the bar, he's saying it in through the microphone.
Right.
I think those are two of three of the elements. One is there's probably never in the history of a presidential candidate anyone who's been more practiced at media and combative live media than Donald Trump. You know, if you think of the average politician, although they give a lot of stump speeches, it's unidirectional, right? It's on stage this. You know, Donald Trump has had 15 years of being in a live talk environment called The Apprentice. Right, that's and like Malcolm Gladwell says, 10,000 hours. You get good at it. You get good at it. And when if you watch an early version of The Apprentice, or if you saw in the boardroom when I saw, or a rough cut, and you saw him today, you'd see, like anybody, he becomes a master. Yeah. So it's unprecedented media training, and ability that works. Two, in an era of people wanting to hear what people are thinking, he is willing to say the things that no one would normally have said. Right. He could criticize the Pope, and it seems to work, right? I don't know how, but it works. Like, so we're in a different era. And three, there's the fuel to that fire, which is we're in an era where it's not controlled media, it's everybody getting media through their social media, right? And therefore, he's had to pay no money, relatively speaking, and gotten vastly more. He's the greatest show on earth right now.
It's the time. It's the timing, too. I mean, Reagan was very good at his media, and he had a lot of experience in front of the camera as well. I'm going to throw it out there. George Washington, very public figure for a long time prior to his presidency.
Reagan and Trump are very...
his strategies, his war strategies, and so the media of the time, he was very good at.
Roosevelt. There's a great book called The Bully Pulpit, which really talks about how he mastered me. I think it's genius. I think it's evil, but it's also, you know, he's playing it like Survivor. He's playing it like The Apprentice. He knocked out, you know, Bush first because that was his biggest fear, his biggest rival, and one by one he's picked these folks off. I hope that he doesn't believe the stuff he says. I think it's calculated. Maybe he does, but it's interesting case study. Fearful of the results.
Before the game, right?
Yeah.
There's the game of getting into the role, and then you got to play the role. So that's the hard part in this election, if you ask me. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a big believer in the experience being greater than the game in terms of sports. And I think the industry, has gone away from Fox Sports and stat lines and has adopted and accelerated social media, obviously. So, you're obviously encouraging fans to be part of a community, that sense of belonging. So, with athletes being so much more available now, I'm curious, though, from a branding perspective, what happens when off-the-field issues impact that experience? Like, I remember when
Okay, so the question, I have to repeat the questions. The question is, what do you do when your celebrity messes up? What do you do when your celebrity does something wrong? And I'm going to start with the lawyer answer. We actually have a tool for that in the contract, and there's a clause in almost every one of these contracts now after the first time this happened, where you can actually terminate your contract with that celebrity. And so that's the legal answer.
It's called.
What's the wording on that line?
It's a morals clause.
It's called a morals clause, and they talk about acts of moral turpitude, and some of my clients are very much taken aback that anyone would think they might try to do one of these things, and I have to
And those
explain
clauses have evolved dramatically over the last 10 years. I mean,
Yeah.
they used to be only if you got convicted of some awful felony, and now it's much looser. I think you have to address the problem beforehand. It's not when the problem happens. I think it's much more about, I mean, athletes are going to be held to higher standards now than they ever were, appropriately. But if you look at someone like, there's a reason that Peyton Manning was the NFL athlete that's made more money off the field than anybody, because until very, very recently, he had a squeaky clean career. Now, there was a blip right after he I shouldn't call it a blip, but there was an issue that came up right after he retired, and he's a client of ours. But it went away fairly quickly. And I think part of the reason it did is that he had so much invested in that sort of trust bank. He had earned his reputation over so long that he could withstand an issue like that in a way that a Ray Rice can't. So we tell our athletes, and I really am working hard on this, that before you even think about brand deals, you have to be engaged in the community, and it has to be authentic, and brands are holding you to such higher standards now that they're trying to prevent it way before it happens. Because once they're in the deal, if the athlete goes sideways,
the mess up before it happens.
yeah, by just having higher scrutiny, by
With the draft, the guy smoking the ball.
the truth gets out, right? We're in the age of transparency. Honestly,
It's actually well dealt with in Dwayne Johnson's show, the Ballers. It's a topic that's discussed in
yeah.
Ballers.
But I think for years in the sports business anyway, and it goes back to like guys like Babe Ruth, where representatives were sort of hiding the truth about what kind of a character the guy was, and brands would align with them and look the other way. Well, you can't do that anymore. It's impossible. And I think Tiger Woods may end up being sort of the last of the great icons that wasn't who we thought he was. And I think we're moving into an age where like you're not going to be able to pull the wool over anybody's eyes anymore.
Yeah, right. Okay. Interesting. I mean, right. And it's for another panel is how that's going to affect our culture, because we have this sort of puritanical double standard in the U.S. and
It's
and
true.
I think it's going to change our culture.
It's true.
Final question. Drum roll. All right. Blue shirt.
Most of your campaign seems like don't have a call to action so there's an immediate ROI. So I'm curious with your position as a marketing firm, what are your KPI from a broad perspective that you're being judged by in terms of the effectiveness of?
Yeah. Well, I can say, I've been here 14 years, so I was there when we needed to sell tickets, and certainly as a marketer, that's a very tactical exercise in terms of how you can, generate ticket sales and fill an arena. Now, because we've been sold out, for so long, for me, it's actually a very exciting time because we can focus more on content development and content marketing. And again, all those do have metrics behind them in terms of how many people are watching our content, and the partners that we're integrating into that content, the value they get from it, and there are other goals, data capture and all sorts of stuff to kind of grow our own ability to connect with our consumers without having to buy traditional media partners. So a lot of that had to do at a time when we weren't focusing on ticket sales with content development, marketing, growing our social, growing our mobile, growing our database so we can control access to our consumers. So there's certainly metrics behind that, but I would say one thing in sports marketers, I always tell people when I'm talking to someone looking to get into the industry, as a sports marketer, at some point in your career, you need to work for a team that is not doing well on the field, on the ice, because that's where you cut your teeth. That's where you really learn how to manufacture success and get people in the arena and grind and hustle to do that. Certainly now, being through that, it's very exciting to think of the next evolution of where we're taking our brand and our team, because we are doing so well in that capacity. The other thing, real quick, talking about kind of that unsigned artist thing, for us on the hockey side, what we're doing is building our youth hockey programs to get more young people playing the ice, and subsidizing programs now, like our Little Kings program. We subsidize 1,000 kids, and we have a waiting list. It's $150 to get all the equipment and 6 ice times for kids, 5 to 10 who have never played hockey before. And that's way cheaper, obviously, than what it really costs. So we're trying to get young people to touch our sport, especially in a place like California, to grow them into fans, through playing. So we're doing a lot more of that as well.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it. This is a beautiful panel. Thank